here we are on the eve of another federal election. And now I could talk about how the coalition has squandered an early polling lead with an absence of policy depth and a series of missteps. But you already know all of that. And this show is about the media. So we're going to take some time to look at the respective media strategies of each major party, because there have been some shocking changes in the wake of AI.
Chicken jockey!
Your money or your life. You're smarter than you look.
Authorised by E. Whittaker, Australian Labor Party, West Perth.
Well, what you just watched there was a series of AI-enhanced social media memes which are having a devastating impact on the coalition. Now, these are official, authorised clips which include dressing Peter Dutton up as an evil Sith Lord who uses a lightsaber to slash the healthcare system. And is any of it true? Not a word. It is brutal politics strategically targeting a young audience and people who don't have hours to spare in their busy lives to study politics. It is a scattergun approach. Throw mud and see what sticks. And some of these clips are reaching hundreds and thousands of young voters. Now, we've been tracking Labor's new AI misinformation blitz across social media very closely and worked out they spent $3.8 million on Google Ads, including YouTube, between March 28 and April 26, and a further $1.1 million on meta platforms such as Facebook and Instagram. And that is more than double the amount of money the coalition assigned to social media. Make no mistake, this sort of discrepancy kills campaigns. And what truly irks me about this new bold form of campaigning is that Labor has spent the last few years lecturing Australians about misinformation. Albanese personally blamed his failed voice referendum on misinformation, and his party even tried to outlaw it on social media, although politicians were going to be exempt from those laws.
There is a lot of misinformation out there, but it's a very clear proposition. Continue to counter some of the misinformation which is out there. There will be misinformation out there. We see it. You all see it. There's been a whole lot of misinformation out there. Some of the misinformation out there is extraordinary. People in public office and public life have a responsibility to not spread misinformation, to talk about the facts.
How times have changed. And also, this was what Albanese had to say back in 2019 about fake political adverts.
But what happens when it turns out that what politicians are allegedly saying isn't actually real at all? Facebook usually won't do anything at all about it. That happened to me just last week when men's rights activist Leith Erickson doctored a social media image from my Facebook page.
It looks like if you stay in politics long enough, you become the villain you once despised. Well, joining me on the panel this week are Sky News contributors James Bolt and Louise Roberts, of course. Louise, what do you make of this new pivot, the use of AI and the willingness to lie to win an election?
Well, the willingness to lie to win an election, gee, that's not a new concept, I don't think, and certainly in recent weeks has it been. So I think, this is the way to win our hearts and minds tomorrow ahead of the vote. I don't think so. And it's a very cynical way of them trying to attract or speak to young voters who will be turning off from this sort of messaging by the thousands, because it is appalling. And what an appalling waste of money as well. Millions of dollars spent on these stupid ads, making him look like a Sith Lord, photoshopping him into various things, which I really struggle to understand the messaging behind these ads, despite all the money they've spent on it. So to me, they're completely counterproductive.
Yeah, I mean, James, they're equal parts light and funny. So you've got him dressed up as Darth Maul with a lightsaber. But there is a brutality to it in that he's cutting through Medicare. And it does kind of work. And I see some of these clips have 30,000 shares, hundreds of comments in it. And they do permeate through the zeitgeist, I think, of that demographic. we'll have to see if it worked, but it looks like, if you're looking at the polls now, that it's definitely had an impact.
Yeah, and we're talking about it, so therefore it is working a lot better than a lot of Liberal ads on it, and especially this Mediscare thing. So, you know, when Anne Ruston talks to Oscar Godsill, who wrote that article that we featured, and she goes, oh, this is just political games from Labor. It's just, duh. Like, first election campaign, where are your political games? I mean, Mediscare, Labor got to this quicker, meaner and louder than the Liberal Party. And Dutton has spent the whole campaign having to just say, like, reject another narrative of him rather than set his own. So no matter what happens on Saturday, major wake-up call for the Liberal Party about not being fast enough on social media, not getting an AI quick enough, and not being able to set an agenda from the start.
And the misinformation law side of this, we were going to have, I guess, discourse policed by these laws. Now, in hindsight, when we've seen the strategies, when we've seen the way that Labor is campaigning, it looks very hypocritical now.
It does completely, because I think as parents as well, we sort of expected these laws to protect our children. That's what we really put our faith in for the government.
And this is targeted at children.
That's right. That was the point I was going to make. Exactly. It's going straight to young voters with, you know, sort of saddled with dealing with and voting on issues which are not of their making. They haven't created the housing crisis. They haven't created the cost of living crisis. They're looking to the government or the future party to actually solve these issues for them. Instead, they're having to wade through these social media memes, which, you know, yes, probably do cut through to a certain extent, but they don't actually give them anything tangible to think, how is a political party going to fix this for me? What's the change going to be for me as a young person living in Australia?
I think that, but though, like, how many young voters actually are out there going, well, what's tangible for me? I mean, I really think every election comes down to who would you rather have a beer with? And when you've got the Labor Party, I mean, look, they're not ads for me, they're not ads for us, they don't speak in the language that we speak, but for some people, that could just be the stuff like, this Labor Party, they're kind of fun. Like, that could just be enough to win over a vote.
Maybe. Well, there is another element to the social media campaigning which is also killing the coalition. Now, Labor's advertising team might be shameless liars, but the coalition's team is simply weird. How is the coalition fighting against the $5 million Labor blitz? Well, with asinine clips like this.
Please vote for me, screamed aimbot Albanese in a desperate attempt to clutch a dub in the last 4 days of the fortnight election. Despite his best efforts to cap his way to victory, the players in the lobby knew his time was up. For the last 3 seasons, Albanese had promised a cheaper item shop, but the price for the battle pass kept rising, causing many players to crash out. The rage continued as Albanese hosted a mini event on the island, where he spent 450 million taxpayer V-bucks on a voice referendum, and now with the storm closing in, the choice is clear. A capping default or Dutton, who will clutch up and get the dub for Aussies with cheaper petrol and energy.
Authorised by Ahurst Liberal, Canberra.
If you publish that as an ad, you deserve to lose. There is no grey area here. The coalition fumbled this campaign because it did not have a message. Instead, it employed a bunch of low IQ young Liberals who are obsessed with Fortnite to produce this utter garbage. It reeks of an older audience desperately trying to attract Gen Z voters by throwing buzzwords at them. Ironically, this sort of thing quickly becomes toxic. No policy details, no plans, just memes, and it will cost them dearly.